Yeah, we'll start with science, page 90. Insects and their habitat. Yeah. Sure, since you're working. That's Karen, did you start away? Okay, so page 90 in your science. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so we finished all of our habitats. We covered the ocean, the pond, the forest, the savanna, and the rainforest on last week. So our last section we'll cover is about insects and their habitats, because insects are animals as well, and they live inside of their own habitat as well. And so that's what we'll discuss today: insects and their type of habitat that they live in. All right, Dennis, you want to start us off on 90? Okay, it's muted again.
Did you know that insects are animals too? There are thousands of different kinds of insects. You can find insects in all the land habitats. We can see part of God's design for insects just by looking at their legs. All insects when grown up have 6 legs. Some beetles are designed for running. A grasshopper's hind legs are designed for jumping. A honeybee's legs are for gathering pollen.
Okay, so insects, like I just said earlier, are animals as well, and there are thousands of different kinds of insects, right? We can find insects in pretty much every single land habitat. Yes, that includes the ocean as well. And so all insects are designed a certain way, and they're designed to live in whatever habitat it is that they live in. So all insects, no matter which one it is, no matter which habitat they live in, they all have 6 legs. Some of their legs are designed for running, some of their legs are designed for jumping, and some of their legs, like the bee, is designed for gathering pollen. So like a tiger beetle, for example, it can run up to 5 miles per hour, which is really fast for an insect. So of course, the tiger beetle will have really long legs. Okay, look at the grasshopper. If you see, his back legs are kind of bent, but they're really long, but that's because he uses those back legs to hop. And then we know the bee has hairy legs, and that's because of the pollen that the bee transfers from different plants. Their legs are hairy so that they can drop pollen and pollinate the flowers. So all insects will have 6 legs when they are fully grown, and all of their legs are designed for different things just based on the insect and what habitat they live in. Okay, 91, Avaya, put your screen on, please.
A praying mantis has 6 legs, but walks on only 4. He holds his front legs up in the front of his face. It looks like he is praying. His front legs, which have little spikes on them, are designed to hold his prey. The praying mantis is one of God's gifts to farmers. The praying mantis eats beetles, caterpillars, flies, moths, and grasshoppers.
which would hurt the farmer's crops.
Okay, so for example, a praying mantis is another insect, and he has 6 legs, but he only walks on 4, and the 2 in front of the praying mantis, they kind of look like he's praying, which is why they call him a praying mantis. The praying mantis is probably a great, not probably, is a great insect for farmers to have because they eat beetles and caterpillars and flies that will eat on the farmer's crops. So because those insects are harmful, a praying mantis eats those other insects, and this is very good for the farmers. So if there's a praying mantis in the garden, that's a good thing because it's eating all the other insects that are harmful to the crops. Okay, so all right, let's go to 92. Let's talk about the 3 parts of an insect. All right. What you need, baby? What about them?
The part of an insect. All insect bodies have 3 main parts. The insect's head connects its eyes, mouth, antenna, and brain. The thorax is the middle section of the insect. We could call it a motor of the insect because the legs and wings are always on this part of the insect's body. The abdomen, the last part of the insect's body connects the organs that the insect needs for living, such as the spider, miracles, and its stomach.
Okay. They do have 6 legs, but they also have 3 main parts of their bodies. They have their head, which contains their eyes, their mouth, and their antenna and brain. Of course, that's going to be in their head. Then we have the thorax, which is their middle part of their body. The thorax will contain, they call it the motor because that's where the wings and the legs are. That's the parts of the insect that helps the insect to move, whether they fly or whether they're crawling. Thorax. Then we have the abdomen, which is the last part, and that contains their organs that they need to live, like the spiracles and the stomach. The spiracles are used for breathing. And so the spiracles and the stomach are in the abdomen part of the insect. So in order for an animal to be an insect, it has to have the 3 parts of its body: the head, the thorax, and the abdomen. That's the 3 parts. Okay, let's go to 94. Yeah, 93 is word. Oh, that's it. Yeah, because I think that's where we're stopping today. Yep, that's it. So that's what I will test on this week. Just the questions that just read. Like how an insect is designed, how are their legs designed differently, how many legs they all have to have, how many parts of their body, the praying mantis, why is it important? So would a spider be considered insect? Why would a spider not be considered an insect? Because it has 8 legs. Even though we look at it and we think that it's an insect, the spider is not an insect because it does not have 8 legs. I mean, 6. All right, let's go ahead and move on to your social studies. Continue on. So we are now going to talk about how America is now going to start growing more in the West, and that is through the invention of the railroad. I'm sure we've all seen a train before, right? And so whenever the railroad was invented in America, that helped a lot of things in a lot of ways, because they usually were traveling by wagon trains. And now with the invention of the railroad, This would help people to travel from east to west a lot quicker, a lot faster. They could get supplies from east to west. The invention of the railroad changed America in so many ways. So let's look at 117 in our social studies book.
Oh, for many years, the way to travel to the American West
Oh,
was by wagon by 180 30 100 what is this 1830. However, a new form of train had come to the understanding states. The railroad at first, railroads were just short lines between two cities, but soon they stretched from east all the wings to that the next
I gotta say again. Learn to shoot.
Nebraska.
May want to ask about the time, but not doing.
Some people began to dream of a railroad that would connect the east to the west. All the ways cross the country.
Stop.
It would be a challenge to railroad the track would have to be laid across the plains and often over stunning mountains.
So like I had said, the way that Americans traveled before the railroad was by the wagon trains, which we had already discussed, them traveling using the wagon trains. But in 1830, that was about to change with the invention of the railroad. And so at first, when they made the railroads, there were just two short lines between two cities. It would go from the east to Nebraska, but they wanted to build a railroad that would connect the entire United States from one side to the other. So the first railroad, just to show you what I'm saying, was in the east and it went to Nebraska. So it didn't travel all the way to the other side. But what they wanted to do was build a railroad that connected from this side of the world all the way across. So it only had stops like halfway initially. So they wanted, and like after you got to the end point, you kind of had to maybe catch a wagon train to get to the rest of the other side. So they wanted to change that and build a railroad that would connect all the way across the United States. Okay. And so it would help in a lot of ways. One of those ways would be for them to get cattle from one side to the other side. They could load the train with the cattle, and the cattle would help to get the train would help to get the cattle on the other side, right? If they wanted to get supplies, goods, just different things that they wanted that was maybe in the east, they wanted to get in the west. The train would make it way faster for them to get those things to the other side. Where's your book? Okay, so the pioneers usually would spend like 5 to 6 months on the journey with the wagon trains, but now with the new train railroad, they could get there in a matter of days. So it would cut down the journey time a lot, this railroad. Okay, 118.
Railroad and begin work on this huge project. It was a race to see who could make more miles of track. The Pacific Road, Union Pacific Road started in Nebraska and worked west. The Central Pacific Railroad started in California and worked east. Many people who came to America to find work and a better life work. The builders of this great railroad, it was often dangerous work. The men worked through hot summer days and cold, snowy winter days. Their hard work forever changed how people traveled in America.
Okay. Okay, so there were two railroad companies that began the work on on building that railroad. So you had the Union Pacific that started in Nebraska. Remember, there's a picture on the map. So the Union Pacific started in Nebraska, and the Central Pacific started in California. And so the first railroad stopped in Nebraska. What they were going to do was build the rest of it from Nebraska all the way to California. So the Union Pacific started in Nebraska and the Central Pacific started in California, and they would both work their sides until they finally met in the middle. Okay. And so many people who came to America, they ended up finding jobs on this railroad. So that was a good thing for America. They were able to offer a lot of jobs to a lot of people by building this railroad. Now, of course, this wasn't easy work. It was dangerous work. There were a lot of mountains in this area, a lot of cold days, a lot of hot days. And it didn't take like a couple of weeks. No, it took a while for them to build this railroad. So the railroad will be called the Transcontinental Railroad because it was across the continent of North America. So the Transcontinental Railroad is what it was called. So trains weren't called trains at this time. They were called locomotives. That's what they were called at that time, but it's still a train. It's the same exact word. Locomotive, train, it's the same exact thing. Okay, so that's how they're starting to work. The Union Pacific started in Nebraska. The Central Pacific started in California, and they were going to meet in the middle to finish the rest of the railroad. Okay, 119. Carson?
I think buffalo was an important part of their way of life. Native Americans used buffalo for food, clothing, and even shelter. As more and more settlers began coming to live, soldiers and Native Americans fought many American Indian wars. Many promises called treaties had been made between the Native Americans and the United States during America's early years. The United States controlled government believed it was buying land from the Native Americans, but Native Americans did not think of land as property. Many thought they were only sharing their land with the United States, not giving up. This caused many misunderstandings.
Okay. So as they began to work on the railroad, like I said, many people were able to get jobs through the invention of the railroad, right? But remember, the Native Americans also lived in this part of the world. And so the invention of the railroad, America was happy about it. But this also, the building of the railroad affected the land of the Native Americans. The Native Americans had their own piece of land, and they lived in a lot of those areas where they were building the railroad. So this caused a lot of problems between them, because the Native Americans were like, this is our land and you're building this railroad through our land. And so it was a lot of little disagreements that began. Then they would sign treaties where they would make an agreement and say, well, you can use this part of the land. It was a lot of issues. Also, it affected the land because some of the animals were living in these areas, and it forced the animals to find other places to go because they were building the railroad in their land, in the area. Okay. And so they had to make a lot of treaties, which were peace agreements. And the United States, you know, they bought the land from the Native Americans. But the Native Americans didn't think that the land was property, so that caused a lot of issues as well. So there were a lot of misunderstandings between the two, because the Native Americans, remember, they were here first, right? So rightfully, the land belongs to them, right? It doesn't belong to the American government. It does belong to Native Americans, but the government felt like the land belonged to the government. So it caused a lot of problems, and that's what kind of made the invention of the railroad. It was a great thing for America, but unfortunately, a lot of the Native Americans lost their land because of this. So they did call the Native Americans called the train the Iron Horse. That's what they nicknamed it. Okay, 120, Dennis. All right, turn please.
Many Americans felt like they couldn't trust the settlers anymore, so they began to fight with them. Many people became afraid of Indians. Soldiers began to force Native Americans to move off their land. Many people forgot that there are still Native Americans who are kind and peaceful. This is a sad part of America's history, for America has always been the Native Americans' home.
So of the Native Americans, because of this, they felt like they could not trust a lot of the Americans, and they began to fight with one another. There were a lot of little battles, a lot of wars. People lost their lives because of this, and it's just unfortunate. But I do feel like the American government should have did a better job, right, of speaking to the Native Americans to let them know that they were, they were planning to build this this railroad in their land. It was their land. It was, even though, they may not have named the land or anything like that. They probably did, but or they didn't buy it or claim it. It was theirs because they had been living there. So it was wrong for the government to just build on their land that way without, speaking to them. So it caused a lot of issues and conflicts between them. Okay, 121, Avaya.
It took many years to finish the Great Railroad, but in 1869, the Union Pacific and the Central Pacific met in Utah. The railroad was almost finished. Just one more spike was needed. While people cheered, a railroad leader drove a golden spike into the last rail. The railroad was finally finished. People could cross the United States by train. That's about now cross the United States by train. That's about 3,000 miles. Can you imagine how it changed the way people could travel? The railroad forever changed the American West.
Okay, so it took many years for them to finally finish. They started in 1830 and they finished in 1869. It took 39 years for them to build that railroad. So it was a lot of work. It took a long time. But finally, after those 39 years, the Union Pacific and the Central Pacific, they met in Utah. So remember, so you get on the map. See what I'm saying? So remember, the Union Pacific started in Nebraska, the Central started in California, and they met midway in Utah. This is Utah here. That's where they met. And fine, so that was the end of their portion when they met halfway. And so the last spike they put ended up being a golden spike. That was the last spike they hit. And the golden spike is not there today. It's actually in a museum today as well. They ended up replacing it with a regular spike, but the golden spike just symbolized, that they were finished, that finally this was the last spike and the railroad was complete. And so about 3,000 miles, that's how long. So now the railroad connected from the east all the way to the west. It connected both sides of the world, and it was over 3,000 miles of railroad. And so now if you wanted to travel to the west, you could. If you wanted to travel to the east, there was a way to do that now faster than the wagon trains, and that was by the railroad. Okay, and so like I said, the golden spike was removed. It's in a museum now in California. And so now the railroad will change so many things. You'll be able to get supplies from the east to the west. If you want to visit family, say if you move to the west and you want to visit family in the east, you could travel now using the railroad. They could get goods and supplies a lot faster to different places. This could also help people with businesses, right? If they wanted to sell products, they could now get it to different parts of the world because of the invention of the railroad. So that was just one of the start of many changes that America is going to go through now because of the invention of the railroad. Okay. All right, so that's the invention of the railroad. That's our lesson this week. Next week, we'll talk about another side of the railroad, and we'll talk about cattle ranching. cowboys and that thing. Okay. All right. So that's it for our social studies on today, guys. Put your books away. Here's some math. Yeah. Your math. For 132A. We'll just go over it together.
I'm gonna finish this. What page?
132A, the multiplication factor. One 132A. All right, y'all have it, Dennis and Lavaria? All right. All right, Dennis, you ready? You can start us off. First site, that's not the page I'm on. Not the page. You need to be on the page so that you know where we are. Say it again, I'm sorry, Dennis.
You said it's 132A.
No, 132A. We don't have a 7 here.
This one is this.
Yeah, that wasn't what we did earlier.
Yeah, it is.
132A.
I
Let me know when you have it, Dennis.
did it earlier, though.
I got him students.
Okay, you can begin.
Saying the multiplication.
The first one.
2 times 5 equals 10 times.
Okay, next one, Navaya.
5 times 6 equals 5 times 6 equals equals 20.
Come again. 5 times 6. Try again.
Is it more or less?
It's more. So count by 5s and put 6 fingers up and count by 5s with each finger. And that'll give you the answer.
30.
30. 5 times 6 is 30. All right, next one, Noriah.
3 times 0 equals 0.
3 times 0 equals 0. Anything times 0 will always be 0. Next one. 4 times 1 equals 4. 2 times 2 equals 4. 5 times 3 equals 15. Back to you, Dennis.
2 times 8 equals 16.
2 times 8 equals 16. Avaya?
4 times 6 equals
4 times 6.
4 times 6 equals 16.
No, try again.
2, 3, 4, 12.
24. 4 times 6 is 24.
Okay.
Okay. 3 times 3 equals 9. 5 times 9 equals 40. 3 times 6 equals 18. 4 times 2 equals 8. Back to you, Dennis.
5 times 4 equals 20.
5 times 4 equals 20. Avaya?
2 times 1 equals 2.
2 times 1 equals 2. 3 times 9 equals 27.
2 times 3 equals 6.
2 times 3 equals 6. 4 times 4 equals 16. 5 times 1 equals 5. Dennis?
3 times 4 equals 9.
3 times what? I'm sorry.
3 times 4.
No, not
equals
9. 3 times 4 is a 9. Try again. 3 times 4.
8 equals 12.
12. 3 times 4 is 12. Avaya?
5 times 7 equals 40. 40.
No, count again.
35.
35. 4 times 9 equals 36.
5 times 8 equals 40.
In a second. 5 times 8 is 40.
2 times 0 equals 0.
2 times 0 equals 0.
4 times 7 equals 20.
4 times 7 equals 28. Dennis?
3 times 1 equals 3.
3 times 1 equals 3. Avaya?
Which row are we on?
The 6th row. First fact.
2 times 7 equals
That's like when anything 2 is like you're adding that number twice. So that's like saying 7 plus 7.
14.
14. 2 times 7 is 14.
4 times 3 equals 12.
4 times 3 equals 12.
3 times 8 equals
3 times 8 equals 24.
5 times 0.
5 times 0 is 0. 2 times what? Not 14. 6 plus 6. 2 times 6 is 12. Dennis?
4 times 5 equals 20.
4 times 5 is 20. Ryan?
3 times 7 equals it equals
3 times 7.
3 times 7. Add 7 3 more times. It equals I don't know. I don't remember.
Okay, I'm gonna need you to practice, okay? 3 times 7 is 21.
Okay.
2 times 4 equals 8.
4 times 8 is 32.
4 times 8 is 32. 3 times 5 is 15. 5 times 2 is 10. Dennis?
9 times 2 equals 18.
9 times 2 is 18. Avaya?
4 times 0 equals
What? It went mute.
4 times 0 equals 0.
Yes? I'm in here. Okay, Narayan?
3 times 2 equals 6.
3 times 2 equals 6.
5 times 5 equals 25.
5 times 5 equals 25. All right, good. I just want to cover those. I have a couple of things I want to cover on the board. And then, yeah, you need to. All right, so remember, area, guys, is how many square tiles it takes to fill up a shape. So in this case, how many rows do I have here?
4. 3.
3 rows. How many in each row?
4.
So my multiplication number will be 3 times 4. And so the area will be 12 square tiles. How many tiles is it? Should be. All right, we're gonna talk about doubling a number. Whenever you double a number, it's like adding that number twice. So if I double 10, what number would I get? 20. 10 plus 10 is 20. If I double 20, what would I get?
40.
40, that's like 2 plus 2 is 4, 40. 30, if I double 30, what would I get? 60.
60.
If I double 40, what would I get? 80. If I double 50, what would I get? 100. If I double 60. What is 6 plus 6? 12. So then 60 plus 60 will make it 120. You see, I still have 12 in here. I just got to add that 0 because there's 0 now. So same thing for 70. 70 plus 7 was 7 plus 7? 14. So 70 plus 7 would be 140. 80. 8 plus 8 is what? 16. So then 80 plus 80 would be 160. Okay? So in your book, it will talk about doubling the number. All you do is add that number twice. That's what double means, to add it twice. I'm not teaching. I said that whenever you ask the person. All right, so if it's 7:45, what time would it be if it's 7:45? It's not 8 o'clock yet.
7:45.
Good. It will be 7:45. Okay. 7:45, 7:45. That's 15 minutes until.
7:45.
So if it's 10:15. 10:15. What would it be? 10:15 is 15 minutes after 10 o'clock. So 10:15.
I knew it.
Okay.
I knew that.
So that's how we practice 2:45 from. It was on your work. Yes. All right, awesome. All right, let's go ahead and review our prepositions definition. Okay, you have your definition from I written yesterday.
I got it. You wasn't here. You just made our face to write it.
All right. All right, so let's go over the preposition. What is a preposition? Preposition is a word that shows the relationship of a noun or pronoun to another in a sentence. So the purpose of a preposition is to show the relationship of a noun or pronoun to other parts of the sentence. That's what prepositions do, okay? So practice your definition. Kind of long, and the new definition. This is what we're testing on Thursday, okay? All right, guys, that's all we needed to go over this afternoon, our science, social studies, math, and I just wanted to review our language prepositions, okay? Y'all have a good afternoon. I'll see you tomorrow for Bible. Bye-bye.